We can also define the height by using the height attribute. I'll type in height, insert quotes, and this will be 122 pixels high. Then I'll save this file, and on the right-hand side, let's click on refresh. And look at that, that looks a lot better. Another benefit of specifying the width and the height is that the browser knows to reserve this space for an image before it's able to completely load the image. If you've ever been to a website where the content jumps around, if it hasn't all loaded yet, that's typically because they haven't defined the width and the height of the different elements on the page. So it's a good practice to always do that for every single image. There's one more attribute that I recommend including as part of the image element, and that's the alt description. Here I'll enter it in, alt equals, and then insert quotes. And here I can define what this image is. I'll call it the Kelvin Cookie Company logo. And now I'll save it. Now, when I refresh the page, you don't notice any difference, but let's say that someone comes to this website using a screen reader, or maybe they're blind and they can't actually see what this logo is. With the alt text, they'll be able to hear that it's the Kelvin Cookie Company logo. And just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to misspell the name of the file and save it and then refresh the page. Here you'll notice that it's not able to load the logo yet, but you see this text that identifies what it should be. So anytime you add an image to a page, it's always good to include these 4 attributes, including the source, the width, the height, and also the alt text. I'll now return it to the previous file name. Not only can you insert images, but you can also insert other types of media, like audio and video. Down at the very bottom of this file, I'll insert some new lines, and here I'll paste in 2 additional elements, one of them for audio and one of them for video. And it follows a very similar structure to an image. Over here, we call out that this is audio, and here you define what the source is. Here, I typed in the name of the audio file. We insert controls because I want it to show audio controls, so you could play or stop the playing. And here you could also define the type. Now, unlike with image, we also use a closing tag. That's because this element is newer and this has been incorporated into that element. And video is very similar to audio. When I save this over on the right-hand side, I'll refresh, and here we see an audio player controls, and down below we see the video player. If you're interested in using audio or video, do you know that you have additional attributes that you could use? Maybe you want the audio to loop, or maybe you want it to autoplay, although that one can be a little bit annoying. With videos, you could also incorporate subtitles, and you have many other options as well. This is just to let you know that you can insert many different types of media into your HTML page. We have a lot of compelling content on this page now. There's text, there's a recipe, there's audio, and there's video. I think what we really need now is an order form where people can order some of these cookies. Let's open up File Explorer once again. Within File Explorer, let's right-click, go down to New, and let's click on Text Document. And let's add a new HTML file called orderform.html. Then let's click Yes on this dialog, and let's now open this file in Notepad. I now have Notepad open with the orderform.html, and over on the right-hand side, I have the browser window that shows me what this HTML file looks like. Currently, there's nothing in this HTML file, which is why the browser window is empty. First, I want to include a table that lists out all of the cookies that we offer here at the Kelvin Cookie Company and the associated price. I'm going to use the table element. I'm going to paste in some HTML. Right here, we see that I'm setting up a new paragraph, and down at the bottom, I close the paragraph. And here I use the table element. Right here, I open it up, and down at the bottom, we close it again with the closing tag. And in a table, it's made up of multiple rows and also multiple columns. And here, I'm setting up the first row of this table. We use the element tr. This stands for table row. And down here, I close it again. So this is the first row in the table. And within this row, I have 2 columns, the cookie type and also the price. Now I refer to this element as th. What does that stand for? Well, this is table header. This is letting my browser know that this is the header of the table. Down here, I then have another row in my table. So I use table row, and then here I close table row. And here too, I also have 2 columns, except this one is referred to as TD. So what's the difference between TD and TH? TD stands for table data. So it's not the header row. This is now where all the data within the table lives. And here I have one cookie called chocolate chip, and it costs $4.50. I'll save this file, and over on the right-hand side, let's now refresh the browser window to see what this looks like. And there I have a very basic table. Of course, when we look at the table over on the right-hand side, it's a little bit difficult to make out that this is in fact a table. Over on the left-hand side, we can add an attribute that adds a border to this table. So here, I'll type in border, and let's say equals 1. I'll save the file, and on the right-hand side, let's refresh, and now we can see a border around this table. To add additional rows, here, I'll copy this row, and let's paste it in. And maybe we also have, let's say, an oatmeal raisin cookie. So we'll say oatmeal raisin, and this one goes for $2.50. I'll save it. Over on the right-hand side, let's refresh, and here we now see another row in this table. This is a very simple view of how you can create tables. There are many more attributes you can use. You could even have certain columns span over multiple columns. So there are all sorts of different options here, but this just gives you an idea of how you can use tables to represent data just like this. Now that we've included a table listing out all of our different products and the associated price, I'd like to add a very simple form that people can use to order some of these cookies. Over on the left-hand side, I'll insert a new line, and here I'll paste in some very basic HTML to add a form. Here, I use the form element. We open it, and down at the bottom, we close it. And there are some very simple elements within here. Let me save this HTML page, and over on the right-hand side, let's refresh it to see what it looks like. Here, I have a label for the cookie type, and here we see the label show up. To the right of that, I have an input field, and here we have input name, and this adds that input field. And down below, I use the same structure for the quantity and also the delivery date. Now, instead of just using an input field for the delivery date, here I could use one of the attributes. I'll type in type equals, and let's set this to date, save and refresh, and this now adds a date picker. The browser has tremendous functionality when it comes to displaying forms via HTML. There are all sorts of different elements you can use. You could add drop-down lists, you could add password fields, you could add radio buttons, checkboxes, all sorts of different things as you build out your forms. This is more just to give you a quick tour of what's possible with forms, and especially if you want to build them out, I recommend going deeper on this topic. We've now looked at many of the different available elements within HTML, but up to this point, we haven't yet formed a proper HTML page. To do that, in Notepad, let's click back over into the index.html file. Back within the index.html file, down below, we see all of the content that's displayed on the page. But what if we want to include a title that shows up on the tab? Or what if we want to include a description for search engines? That wouldn't be visible on the page, but we still need to pass that information to the browser. And so far, we've just been focusing on the body content, but we need to structure this as a proper HTML page. At the top, let's add a few new lines and then go to the very top line. At the very top, I'm going to add an element that tells the browser that this is in fact an HTML document type. We'll type in doc type and then HTML. Next, we need to tell the browser that all of this content that appears below is in fact HTML. So we're going to use a block element to do that. Here, I'll type in HTML, and at the very bottom, let's add it again, but this time we're going to close it off. Now the browser knows that all of this content stored within is HTML. And now we want to separate this out into two separate sections. We have the head, where we can pass information that's not visually displayed on the page, and then we also have the body content. So right at the very top, I'm going to add a block element called head. I'll copy it, and down below, let's close it out. And right down here, I'll add one called body, open it, and down below, I'll close it out. Now that I've added all of those, let me apply some indentation just so everything's a little bit easier to see. I've now applied some indentation, so hopefully everything's a little bit easier to parse. Throughout this video, we've been focused on the body section of the HTML document, basically everything that's visually shown on the page. Let's now shift our focus to the head. The head contains all of the metadata about the page. Basically all of the stuff that the web browser needs to know, but that won't be shown. Right up here, I'll paste in 2 examples of the types of content that you would put here. I've included a title, the Kelvin Cookie Company homepage, and also the description. This is what search engines can pick up. Over here, if we scroll over, the description is the Kelvin Cookie Company is the best cookie company in the world. Now, if I save this right now, over on the right-hand side, I'll refresh the page, and you'll notice that none of the body has changed. But if we look at the very top, you'll now see that the tab name is titled Kelvin Cookie Company Homepage. It's taking the title that I provide here. We also have a description. So let's say that search engines now index this page. They'll take this description into account. You could put lots of different things into the head. You could also include, let's say, a fav icon. You could also load various CSS, which affects the look and feel of the page. You could even load up different JavaScript that you want to use on the page. So there are lots of different items that you could put within the head of your page. Under the head, we have the body section of our page. And again, this is what we focused on for most of the video. And this is all of the content that's displayed visually on the page. Now, you might be wondering, well, when we started creating this HTML page, how is it that it worked without all of this structure in place? Well, the reason why is HTML is very resilient. Even though we didn't include HTML, the web browser assumed that this was an HTML document, so it continued to work. However, to structure an HTML page properly, I recommend using these key building blocks every single time you set up an HTML page. All right, well, thank you so much for helping with this basic HTML website for the Kelvin Cookie Company. I am sure we're going to sell a lot of cookies. Of course, there are many more HTML elements and also attributes. To learn more, I've included resources down below in the description. To watch more videos like this one, please consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next video.